Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. My name is Michael Castagnetto. I'm president of North American Surface Transportation for C.H. Robinson. And certainly thank you all for attending our session. I want to thank James Lamont from StarKist for joining us today. And we're going to spend a couple minutes, brief introductions, and then really we want to spend some time talking about, overall market volatility, inclusive of tariffs, and how we're managing that together. The reaction to that, so how are we looking at efficiency, performance, and really resiliency of supply chains in reaction to the current marketplace. And then we'll finish up with tech and AI and how we're looking at that to drive solutions and opportunities. So really quickly, C.H. Robinson, we're the world's largest 3PL and logistics solutions provider, service 83,000 customers on a global basis. And the division I am lucky enough to work in really focuses on North American over-the-road truckload, LTL, consolidation, and any real complex solutions we can offer our customers. We pride ourselves on bringing the best combination of people, process, and technology to our customers, and really want to thank James for joining us today. Maybe, James, if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick introduction and a little bit about StarKist, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm James Lamont, the Director of Supply Chain at StarKist. StarKist, for anyone who doesn't know the brand, is the #1 tuna brand in the United States. We sell roughly $1 billion each year worth of tuna. We have 3 manufacturing sites, one in American Samoa, one in Ecuador, and one in Senegal. We think that diversity of where we produce really gives us a competitive advantage. Our goal overall is to produce a low-cost and sustainable protein for millions of Americans. And low cost is really what we try to do. So we really develop our supply chain to have our lowest landed cost that we possibly can.
Thank you. So why don't we just dive right in? With everything going on, you mentioned American Samoa, Ecuador, Senegal from a production perspective, global supply chain, lots of market volatility. I'll get to tariffs next, but why don't we just start with, in the current environment of geopolitical, port unrest, you name it, how is StarKist building a supply chain to manage through that?
It's been a challenge for us. Historically, what we did was we looked at having single service providers and really trying to group together our volume. Over the last kind of 2 years, we've looked at more of a portfolio approach. We really want to split up our different routes and different service providers. A really good example was, so when we had the Panama Canal issues in 2023, 2024, we were single source at the time with CMA, who didn't have good West Coast services for us. So what we were stuck with is we had a lot of congestions, we had a lot of blank sailings. Guayaquil, where we produce in Ecuador, is the last port of call before the Panama Canal. So there was a lot of vessels omitting that from their schedules. What we had to do is go out and source secondary suppliers. So what our focus has really been on to make sure we don't have a single point of failure anywhere in our network. We're really focused on building relationships and building long-term relationships with multiple different service providers and have everyone specialized in different parts of our business.
I think that's pretty common. We're seeing this across almost all verticals. Really, customers are looking for what are the options in terms of how do we build a supply chain that can handle these disruptions? What is plan A? What is plan B? And what is the best combination of service and value? As you think about then moving into kind of the next level of that, which is the tariff world and how it might impact a company like StarKist, what type of planning and kind of scenario planning have you done at StarKist? And maybe just a brief introduction for the group here on how it has impacted you or isn't, and what is some of the process you've gone through?
Yes, so we've been experiencing tariffs for many years, not just now. So we produce about 50% of our product in American Samoa. So we're thankful enough that we can bring that in to the US with no tariffs, no duty paid on that product. For us, developing an American supply base is really important to us, and that's really one of our competitive advantages. But in saying that, we still produce the other 50% in countries where we've got to look at what our right product mix is. We've really been focused on what our S&OP process is to make sure that we're producing the right product in the right locations, while also going back and investing more in what our production capabilities are.
That's fantastic. I think you're unique having that high of a percentage of your products being
Yeah.
tariff relief.
Yeah, we've looked at, over the last kind of 10 to 15 years, is American Samoa the right place for us to produce in? It's a tiny territory. There's about 50,000 people. And out of that 50,000, about 5,000 either directly or indirectly work for StarKist. But we truly believe that that's the best location for us to kind of continue our growth.
Appreciate it. So then maybe the next step as you think about, the impact of market volatility, tariffs, the next step, what we've heard from customers a lot is, well, then how do I build efficiencies, performance, resiliency into the supply chain? What are some of the things that you're doing to try and offset those costs, offset those impacts, and how have you worked with both your supply base, but also your team to counteract those impacts?
We've seen a lot of panic buying, especially from the retail customers. I think a good example is Sam's Club. We're one of our largest customers. They missed the pre-purchasing on a lot of when the potential pork strikes were happening. Then what happened in January when there was another potential strike, they loaded up a lot of their product. So what we're now doing is we're trying to look at what the purchasing, the historical purchaser of our customers are, and trying to anticipate, are they loading up in their inventory? Are they going to unload their inventory in the next quarter? To really kind of understand better on what their behaviors are to lessen the impact on ourselves.
Yeah, what we've seen at C.H. Robinson is despite the fact that, especially in over-the-road trucking in North America, where the market's been relatively depressed for the better part of 3 years, is that our customers are feeling the pressure to identify additional savings and efficiencies because there is a need to offset this. And certainly optimization.
Yeah, frequency of deliveries. I think that's been the thing that we've been looking at a lot as well.
Yeah, multimodal opportunities, how do we maximize shipments, those type of things has been just a huge focus area for our customers, not only in the food and beverage vertical, but in whether it's auto, healthcare, et cetera. They're looking for options in terms of how do we build cost savings, optimization, inventory resiliency. And so maybe let's kind of dig a little deeper there on inventory, not only inventory visibility, but just inventory access. So what are some of the things that StarKist does to make sure you have inventory in the right place at the right time?
Yeah, we're trying to better implement all our S&OP processes at the moment. We're predicting and we're using a lot more AI tools at the moment to actually go in and look at what our historical purchase trends have been and making sure that we've got the product at the right location for us. We spend a significant amount of money each year redistributing what our inventory is. Would rather invest that money in tools to make it the right location the first time rather than having to reposition it.
Yeah, certainly we've seen a demand from our customers in terms of providing multiple inventory options. The consumer of today wants their product quicker, faster, and in more places. And so that's really put a lot of challenge on supply chains in terms of where do you keep your inventory, how many places do you keep your inventories, and what's the cost basis that you manage, and how often do you measure that?
Yeah, and we've always looked at, so currently we have a 5-network distribution center strategy. We've looked at either 4 would be correct for us. There hasn't been the payback at the moment, but we're very open to looking at what our current supply chain network look like and what we think it's going to look like in the future. I'm very confident that the way that we act today won't be the same way that we're doing business in 2 years or 4 years. So we're trying to prepare ourselves to more easily shift with where the market conditions take us.
Yeah, I think you just said probably the most, it's obvious, but I think it's a missed thing, which is the supply chain is changing incredibly quickly. And where we were 3 years ago in the pandemic to where we are today versus where we're going to be 3 years from now, it's going to demand flexibility.
Yeah.
It's going to demand the ability to manage multiple supply chains at the same time. Yeah. So maybe shifting a little bit into supply chain resiliency.
Yeah.
So as you came into the pandemic and we saw this massive push through retail, food and beverage, and then obviously now a shift into kind of post-pandemic, what are some of the things in terms of how you think about resiliency?
Yeah, so we historically, I think, we were very set in our ways. We're a business that's been operating for over 100 years. We've got a very stable market. we will produce product at one location and send it to one port. That's not the way that we can do business anymore. So we rely on a lot of our 3PL partners, but we definitely look at having multiple ports, reducing any single points of failure, making sure that a hiccup in our supply chain doesn't become a disaster. It becomes a detour for us. So even if we don't have established relationships with partners, we're always out there trying to source new partnerships and looking at different ways to do business.
I like that, a detour versus a disaster. I'm going to save that. So let's shift to technology then.
Yeah.
So as we've seen technology transform, supplement, complement current supply chains, what are some of the things that StarKist does with technology for your supply chains, and what are some of the areas where you think you've got some gaps?
Yeah, so I think visibility, that's the one that we've really got the gaps at the moment. We have about 15 different service providers. Each one of them have their own TMS systems or portals that we can go in and actually start tracking our product. Our goal at the moment is to find a software solution where we can have up-to-date real-time data in the one location. But just being able to tell where the product is only part of the story. Where we want the next step to go to is AI, which is going to allow us to just look at the exceptions. We have a fire hose full of data coming in every single day with a lot of different touch points and a lot of different containers moving through our network. What we want to see is a tool that allows us to just see what the exceptions are. If we've got a train that's being delayed 50% of the time, we're not going to staff that warehouse to unload if we know there's a good chance that it's going to be delayed another time. Overall, we're trying to reduce our accessorials. We're trying to reduce that attention and demurrage. That's where we see the real cost savings moving forward will be for us. So we're really focused on the visibility and then a tool which allows us to actually go and enact actions to actually change what's happening.
I think you bring up a really interesting thing. Visibility has been a buzzword for a few years now, but I think what you're describing is what we're hearing from other customers as well, which is visibility on an island.
Yeah.
is no longer the actionable thing that it used to be, right? You want an integrated visibility so that you can act on it, so it can trigger the response.
Yeah.
And trigger an action.
Yeah, so my drayage company is trying to leave it to the same warehouse as the intermodal that we use. We want to be able to predict that we're over capacity at that location and we need to do something about it. And then we wanted to tell us which containers based on our dwell and our detention and demurrage requirements that we have to unload and in which order.
So you brought up AI a little bit. Robinson's been pretty public about our work in AI, and you described it pretty accurately. For us, it's the implementation of tasks and information that instead of waiting for people to do it or for people to try and sift through the mountains and mountains of data they get, but to really focus their action on the value creation items. How is AI coming to life for StarKist?
And exactly that. It's taking away the noise. So you can get lost in the forest. We really want to see it where it just pinpoints, here's where your problems are, and here's what the corrective action should be, to really help us focus on, avoiding any unnecessary costs. We're also using it from an S&OP standpoint as well. We need to refine our process. We need a lot more different types of data set. Now with leveraging AI, we're looking at weather patterns. We know if there's a hurricane coming in, we've got a shelf-stable protein, which is highly needed at that time. So we try to predict when there will be any type of weather events. We then try to look at how we can best move around our product into those locations.
So when you think of where you need to be 3 to 5 years from now, what barriers do you believe you're going to have to overcome, or internal or external, to get to where you need to be?
I think acceptance of the technology. I still think it's very new. We as a company, with the basic language models in AI, we're fairly comfortable with. But then it's taken that to the next level where you're comfortable to see what it's predicting that you should do and then kind of follow that path. So we're definitely on the path to getting there, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think what you just described is a really strong progression that what we've seen in our business. Robinson's been using AI or large language models for the better part of 2 decades. but it starts with what you described, right? Whether it's pricing models, it's macros from Excel when I was a lot younger, or different things that provided information to, more recently generative AI and now agentic AI going forward. And really, to us, the big shift is this movement from automation and elimination to really task generation and providing better service, better information, both to our people, to our customers. And again, thinking of it not as eliminating the work necessarily, but doing the work better, faster, more often, more accurately, and maybe not being done by a human. And so it's that combination, though, of giving our people the ability to do the things you as a customer would want, right? Value-added services, actionable information, and data as opposed to tasks.
Yeah, and I think, from our perspective, engaging companies like C.H. Robinson, what we want to see is that you can help us make our supply chain more efficient, leverage the technology that you have and the experience that you have to make us more efficient.
So, got a couple more minutes and then we'll open it up for some questions from the audience here. And I really kind of want to think about the future supply chain. And so we talked a little bit about this, but as you think of what you're going to need future proofing, you mentioned your current state of 3 production areas. You mentioned visibility being a desire, or integrated visibility being a desired future state. When you think, though, of building that future-proof supply chain, maybe we'll start there from future concepts. What do you believe are things that StarKist will need and are hoping to get from organizations like either CH or folks you could meet at a show like this?
I think flexibility and speed. Like you mentioned, we've got 3 production sites. We need to be able to turn those production sites on and off based on what the market conditions are. We were slow to react in Q1 this year, and we had service issues. So our fill rate wasn't at the level where we needed it to be. That's because we couldn't turn on productions at different facilities. We've now worked pretty hard this year to make sure that we have more flexibility. So depending on the fish price, depending on what the needs are for the product types we're producing, that we can switch from plant to plant more efficiently than what we did.
So when you think of kind of that full mix of your products, obviously you have raw goods, you have packaging, and then you have kind of the consumer engagement. As you think of that supply chain of the future, how do you believe the supply chain would help you maximize sales, help you maximize impact to StarKist overall?
Yeah, I think if you're looking to maximize sales, our customers are very price sensitive. We as a company want to produce the highest quality product at the lowest cost. To do that, we need to rely on our supply chain partners to remove any of the costs, the unnecessary costs that we have in our supply chain. So that's what we're really focused on. We want to have partners who aren't just charging us accessorials. They're actually thinking through and they're managing our product like it's their own product. So we've built a lot of really good relationships with our current service providers, where they definitely take ownership of our product. So if it's our drayage company pre-pulling rather than charging detention and demurrage, they've got a playbook and they're going ahead and doing that on our behalf.
So if I heard you correctly, you want the highest level of service,
the cheapest we can.
lowest
Yeah,
cost.
okay. I'm sure we're very unique there as well.
Yeah, very unique. Never heard that at all. Maybe we'll just wrap up with this. So, as we think about the focus on cost and efficiency, and you're a unique supply chain in that you have global production, you have ocean, you have customs, you have port, you have inbound, you have warehousing, cross-dock, you have final mile. You have a lot of nodes in your modeling. For all the folks who provide some type of logistics support, and you've mentioned a couple things, whether it's accessorials, what would be the maybe 1 or 2 things that you'd want to see from those providers that would help you hit your goals in the future?
Yeah, I think we mentioned it before. I want to see them take ownership of our product and to put our company and our freight forward first. So we want to make sure that they're doing it. So I think partnerships is what we need moving forward more than anything else.
So with that, James, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this with us today. You and I talked, we'd like to get some questions from the audience. So maybe we'll spend the next 10 minutes or so answering questions from anybody But before we do that, I just want to thank you and StarKist for joining us and really appreciate it. So we'll open it up to the audience. What questions do you have for James or myself related to the topics we've covered today?
For you. Given the tariffs, the whole change in logistics movement that's happening right now, how is it impacting your two businesses, and what are you doing about it?
So for us, we're moving production to where the tariffs are the lowest. So American Samoa is zero duty to bring product in. So we're investing more in that location, and we're trying to increase the capacity of that location as well.
Okay.
You know, for our business, what we've seen is really trying to meet our customers where they're at and what those options could be. So this has been an incredibly difficult period for a lot of our customers, in that you built a supply chain, you built a plan B. In fact, many of the plan Bs were places the government said you should be moving production to, and then when the tariff numbers came out, those numbers were worse than the areas you were in before. And so it's really then, well, what is plan C and plan D? And so we've been very clear, you know, for us, we want goods to move, and we want goods to move freely, but we're relatively agnostic in terms of where those goods move from, because we are a global to local company. You know, from a just brass tacks, and call it very tactfully concept, you know, it puts a lot of pressure in terms of customs and how much money that we're floating out, and it changes your credit risk and those type of things you don't really think about, but then all of a sudden the numbers change pretty dramatically. But overall, I think we're seeing customers lean into our capabilities, leaning into our expertise. We've introduced some new technology related to helping customers solve that very question. So what would a supply chain look like, and what do my tariffs mean, and what do they not mean, and what's the overall cost of the supply chain? But this has been an incredibly unique period. And what you thought was true on January 1st wasn't true on March 1st, and then that wasn't true on April 1st, and then it changed again on May 1st. And so it's really about making sure that wherever this lands, that we're there to meet our customers where they're at. And it's really an important period in supply chain, because, you know, to your point, consumers want the lowest possible goods cost with a high quality, and we're being tasked to find as much savings as we can, because there's additional cost being put into the overall product life cycle that wasn't there a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, I ran logistics for Procter for 4 years worldwide, and we had a lot of movement from Southeast Asia to other parts, and that's been growing a lot. Are you seeing any more significant movement to that area because it's gotten congested?
You know, you had China first, then you had kind of your secondary market, which was Southeast Asia, and then we had a push to India. But that's a good example of, you know, we're a lot of direction of moving out of China into Southeast Asia, move into India, and then India's got very close to or higher tariffs depending on the product mix than China, depending on commodities are. And so I think it's been tough for companies to know
which way to go,
where to end.
Yeah.
And really, from our perspective, again, businesses need stability to understand how to plan.
Okay.
And so whatever the numbers end up being, as long as your competitors are having to deal with the same numbers, I think people feel like you could fight the good fight. But it's really difficult when you're not sure, well, do I move production? But by the time you get it moved, the rules changed again. Mm-hmm. And what's the impact of I move my supply chain and then it's no longer what I thought it was going to be? And so that's where I do think there's been a little bit of paralysis by analysis right now. And we're just trying to hopefully get to a point where companies know I can make a decision, build a supply chain, and then do the work we discussed in terms of optimizing.
Got it. Time for one more question. Anyone? Do you have one?
Yeah,
up here, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you for that, guys. I have a question about AI literacy. My observation is that there is not a lot of AI literacy broadly. People can type a prompt into an LLM, get a response back. So they kind of understand the what, but they don't understand how the prompt leads to the outcome that it generates. And that's not only true for LLMs, but I think that's also true for the whole world of AI that exists beyond LLM, which is another example of, I think, the lack of literacy. LLM is just one part of a huge field. So my question to you would be, do you agree with that view, or do you have a different view? What's AI literacy like within your organizations? And I guess to what extent do you think that there's a real risk of lack of AI literacy leading people to put too much faith, perhaps, in the results they're getting from the tools they're using now?
Yes, there's a lot there. I think, first of all, at C.H. Robinson, we think AI is a real changer in terms of our ability to utilize technology data and get it into our people's hands quicker, faster, and more often. We do believe that it can take many of the non-value added tasks that our people do and remove those from their desk and do it in a way that I mentioned earlier. It's a shift in mindset from elimination to doing it more often, better, faster, more accurate. Listen, I can tell you my account managers who deal with our customers, every time we've ever implemented automation or improvement, they fight it because they're worried it isn't going to be done the way it needs to be done, the way their customer needs it done, and everybody's customer is a special snowflake. And we have to, modify and customize everything we do. What agentic AI and generative AI is doing for us is it allows those same account managers, through teaching them AI literacy, to teach the agent how their customer needs to be treated. So we kind of think of it from an 80-20 rule. We're going to build an 80% agent, and then we're going to let our teams shape the last 20% to meet the customer's needs that they have. The simplest way, though, is as we look to hire young talent who's coming into the industry, coming out of university or wherever they're coming from, these folks don't want to do the base repetitive tasks that dominate the supply chain world, whether that's making appointments, order entry, track and tracing trucks, all the things that go from the quote to cash life cycle of an order. And so we're going to try and attack that. But I think there's a long road of work ahead of us. But it's really been a shift in mindset away from eliminating to augmenting. And I think from talking to our people, when we say we're going to eliminate this, they think job loss. When we say we're going to free you up to do more of what your customer actually pays for, they think value. And so there's a big shift in kind of how we're talking about it. I'd love to hear how you're thinking about it with your team.
Yeah, we're very new on the journey of AI. So I'm going to say there's a lack of understanding in our business, but there's a willingness to learn more. I think we all see that it's going to be incredibly important for us to continue our success using it moving forward. We're waiting to see where the market goes, I think, before we get too in depth with it.